Gordon Brown, legendary Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and former Chancellor of the Exchequer for a decade. I say legendary because Tony Blair kind of screwed him. See, for many people who don't know this, he was going to be Prime Minister when Tony Blair originally became Prime Minister. The rumour was that he got stuck in a toilet and the deal was he'd let him out if he let him become Prime Minister first. After 10 years as Chancellor of the Exchequer and utterly buckling our economy, he then became Prime Minister when Tony Blair stepped down. And Tony Blair only really stepped down because I think after 2 years he realised, David Cameron's going to beat me in 3 years. I know. So as to not endure any of the consequences of some of my economic choices, I'll give Gordon Brown a shot for a few years, or for as long as he can, before he has to call for a general election, where he got utterly shafted. Was it 13 years? 12 years, I think, actually, Tony Blair was in charge. Yeah, I think it was. Maybe it was 10. Doesn't matter. Really doesn't matter. Because Brown got screwed. Of course, he screwed himself, really, when you think about some of the policies introduced. Economic crash, the RBS nonsense. Oh dear, yeah, that was not good. Spend, but not understand what you're spending it on. Sounds like a poor person that was given £1 million and doesn't know what to do with it. So they just spend it. It's almost like no one's ever heard of an ISA. He also is responsible for one of the funniest things he ever did. Many things were said in Parliament that were funny, like save the world. But no. No, the funniest thing he ever did was he took our entire gold reserve, worth 15 billion, and sold it for 3, when gold was at its lowest possible value. We had actual assets at one point. He sold them. I love it Conservatives get criticism for selling assets, but the ones that started that kind of crap to pay bills was Labour. In 2015, Gordon Brown stepped down as an MP, and to be honest, I don't take issue with him anymore. I really don't. Recently, during a political recap stream, I mentioned how he took a shot at Jeremy Corbyn for trying to create a caretaker government, and how it is absolutely self-indulgent. That is what Gordon Brown said. I think there's a certain level of irony to it, considering he was pretty much just a caretaker Prime Minister himself. He is a Remainer. He campaigned for Scotland to remain in the United Kingdom, and still believes they should, even though one of the biggest contentious points is that Scotland only voted to stay in if they remained a part of the EU. Well, that didn't work the way they wanted. Give them their independence, it'll be really funny, and we won't have to keep giving them money. Hey, more money for us! Win! He's also a Remainer, and this is important because he's recently come under fire for what many believe is him undermining the UK's negotiating hand in Brexit. Gordon Brown and his Remainer allies all have been accused for making a no-deal Brexit more likely because they've been undermining Boris Johnson's no-deal negotiation tactics. In an interview with BBC News, Simon Jack, a BBC business correspondent, said that Gordon Brown and his fellow Remainers in Parliament and the political establishment had removed the threat of a no-deal, with Mr Brown simply dismissing the claims before urging MPs to seize control of the House of Commons to block a no-deal departure. Gordon Brown has called on Parliament to order Boris to commission an independent report on the consequences of no-deal before taking the UK out of the EU, with a number of claims saying that it's disputes over who will lead a national unity government distracting Remainers from attempting to stop Boris. That's because the national unity government just sounds like an authoritarian idea at its very basic level, and I can't be the only person with a tinfoil hat on that thinks that. It really was a nagging feeling that occurred to me. On BBC's Radio 4 Today programme, Gordon Brown was actually quoted as saying, without a no deal on the table, you can't really negotiate. And he's quite right, because if you don't have a deal, what do you have? Oh, that's right, you have no deal. If you remove no deal, then a deal has to be agreed upon. But as we now know, there isn't a single version of any deal in Parliament that gets a majority. In fact, there is only one that does, and it's not a deal, it is Remain, which then shows just how absolutely self-serving the majority of MPs in that chamber in the House of Commons are. It is worth pointing out and reminding everyone, the UK voted to leave, not to remain. Therefore, if it has to be no deal as the terms that we leave under, then that are the terms that we leave under. We do not stay, therefore, and thereby, giving parties like the Brexit Party what will undoubtedly be the biggest ammunition the world will have ever seen. They will win by a landslide. I'm not saying it because I want Nigel Farage to be Prime Minister. I'm saying it because the current way politics is run will cease to exist. And that's not scaremongery. That is a basic fact. You betray enough of the voters, and they will vote against you. It's why UKIP got as many votes as it did in 2015. 4 million votes, if I remember correctly. Now imagine that concentrate. Imagine that, but with 16 million voters, or 17.4 to be exact. You betray them, and they will vote against you. Now, yes, you could now say, but what about the 16.4 million people? Did I say yes? Doesn't matter. The 16.4 million people, what will happen if they don't get what they want? Well, that doesn't actually matter because they lost. How is this still an argument? People are so fed up with this, it's getting embarrassing. The idea of calling for this independent report on the consequences when there's less than 8 weeks when Parliament finally comes back is an absolute waste of time. Negotiating should be happening. That's what should be happening. Everything we don't like should be changed. If nothing can be changed, we should also be preparing in the event of no deal. Preparing. I don't know why people are so scared of this. I really don't, because I think we'll make a success of it. And while I respect Gordon Brown for recent comments, I don't respect his interfering with what is currently going on in Parliament that hasn't even come back from its summer recess. Boris has done literally nothing in Parliament yet. And people are so scared of him. It's like when Trump took office. People were trying to find a way to get rid of him before he had a chance. Why don't you give him that? What is it with you, John Major, Gina Miller, and all the other morons? Oh, and Tony Blair, that are trying to get rid of him, trying to undermine him instead of trying to find a way to support him. Well, that's right, because all of you have one thing in common. You want to remain. Sorry, folks. We voted to leave. We're going to leave. Gordon, go back working for a charity. You're doing fantastic work there. Keep your political mouth shut. And don't ever get involved in economics. You just don't, okay? Just don't.